Welcome to our Building a Nuclear-Free World talk story. My name is José Barzola from the Mānoa Institute for Peace at the University of Hawai'i at Manoa. Our talk story today is on Now What? Supporting Peace-Building Narratives Around the Atomic Bombings in our social studies classrooms with Jessica Lau, and it'll be moderated by myself. Thank you for joining us today to learn about the tragic impacts of nuclear bombs. This talk story is actually part of a larger Building a Nuclear-Free World exhibit currently available at the Hamilton Library Bridge Gallery at the University of Hawai'i at Manoa, which is available till the end of the month of April. That's hosted by not only the Mānoa Institute, but also the National Nagasaki Memorial Hall for the Atomic Bomb Victims in the Hiroshima Atomic Bomb Museum, with unfortunately the continuous threat of nuclear devastation around the world. Learning about and working to build a nuclear-free world has never been timelier. This exhibit continues Mānoa Institute's long engagement with public outreach on the nuclear threat, which we began back in 1995 with the 50th anniversary, and then once more in 2018 and 2020 with the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombings. In addition to the viewings of the exhibition, we were also invited to attend Senator Spark Matsunaga, who were named after here, a portion of the exhibit on peace and the ever-urgent need to build a nuclear-free world. And there are multiple activities and events happening throughout the month as well. So thank you for joining us for a discussion around educational curricula for various stakeholders regarding the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A brief overview of student-led research conducted around Hawaii's current history textbook will be shared. Then participants will have the chance to discuss possible next steps for us all to take to move forward toward a nuclear-free world within the education field. Our guest today is Jessica Lau, who's a fourth-year undergrad at the University of Hawai'i at Manoa, double majoring in psychology and human development and family studies with minors in peace studies and communicology. She hopes to pursue a career in education with particular focus on supporting successful holistic outcomes and promoting equitable access for all students in education. Thank you all for being here today. Get us started. I'm going to turn it over to Jessica. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jose. What a spiel. I appreciated it. Thank you for the introduction as well. Thank you all for being here on this evening. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we can go ahead and get started. Let me put this into slideshow. Can you see my slideshow? The presentation? We're good? Awesome. Yeah, so my presentation is Now What? So we're supporting peace-building narratives around the atomic bombings in our social studies classrooms. Originally, this was a project funded by Europe, the Undergraduate Research Opportunity Program, and myself and Kristen Lau were both researchers for this project. Our advisors were Jose Barzola and Maya Ing, and this is for the Mānoa Institute for Peace. So my agenda for tonight is going to be our importance, what we found, and then our discussion. So the importance of the Mānoa Institute, as well as learning a little bit more about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then its connections to Hawaii, what we found in these textbooks, so a brief overview of the research, our results and research suggestions, and then any questions. We'll open it up to the floor for questions. If there's no questions, then we'll just get right into the discussion. And these are the questions that we have there. So what best aligns with your goals for education? What do we hope to see and what should we consider? And then how can we make this work? So I'll be fostering an activity for all of us to do to plan out what we want to see in Hawaii textbooks around atomic bombing. Okay, so on to our importance. So the Mānoa Institute for Peace is a departmental program here associated with the College of Social Sciences, and it promotes cross-cultural understanding and collaborative problem solving, teaches practical conflict management skills, and emphasizes critical thinking and collaboration. It has a range of focus from Hawaii, the Asia Pacific region, and the world. And so a lot of that was really connecting to various places around the world. And one of them we had the opportunity to connect with was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And we were able to present at Nagasaki Youth Symposium to talk a little bit more about those perspectives, about what we learned in education around the atomic bombings. So the symposium was created to unite youth around the world and expand that network for peace. Okay, so on to the brief overview of our research. So our research question is sort of stated here. So we wanted to analyze the narrative and content of a sample of high DOE textbooks around the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So particularly, what are they saying in these textbooks? What perspectives are they sharing? And how can we make that a little bit more inclusive to the perspectives for Japan and Hawaii and that, cross-cultural understanding? So our hypothesis was that textbooks will mainly share and emphasize factual historical information without delving into other social science aspects. So an example I remember from my own education was, they just go over the like an atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki on these dates, and later on the World War II ended. And so is it that factual historical information that's being presented in those textbooks, or is there other expansion of other social science aspects? We also think that schools can further benefit from integrating various cultural values and perspectives, peace building in schools, and then extending cultural dialogue with diverse populations. So our method was qualitative. So we pulled quotes. Oh, well, first we contacted a random sample of high GOE history teachers to learn about the textbooks that they use in the classroom. And then we found textbooks or received a scan from educators, and we found 3 textbooks that I'll be delving into a little bit more later on in this presentation. We pinpointed specific areas and sections that talked about the atomic bombing on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and then performed a content analysis uh, and used inter-rater reliability for coding themes. So that made sure that both myself and Kristen, who was the other researcher, made sure that we, I guess, aligned in our values as to like what themes we found. So themes are really just ideas taken away from the text. So what ideas were really shared in those texts. Okay, so our result, again, our qualitative content analysis, we found themes and ideas. We found 6 overall themes throughout these textbooks. Theme 1 was going to be destruction of land through atomic weapons or the environmental impact. Theme 2 was testimonials or quotes shared from either the US perspective or the Japanese perspective. Theme 3 was overall thoughts or ideas of human health and casualties. And then theme 4 was reader reflections. Were there opportunities for the reader to reflect on what they just read? Were there questions and critical thinking being fostered in the text? And then theme 5 was the political, historical, and economic context, which is usually found in most textbooks. So that's, again, that factual information. And we see that, again, the number 19 is much more than all the other themes had. And then our last theme was technological advances or ideas around modernity or the modern world. So the numbers by those themes are how many times we found that theme in all textbooks. And you can see that the theme 5 showed up the most, and then theme 2 and theme 3, then 4 and 6, and then 1. And then we did a content analysis on the word frequency. So how many times did a certain word show up in the quotes that we found in the textbook or in the passages? And so that was a quantification analysis. And so we found those words there. So bomb or bombs, Japan or Japanese, atomic, of course, and then order or decided. Those are mainly linked with US President Truman or Emperor Hirohito. And so that was Japanese emperor at the time. So that was very interesting. If you had watched another presentation given by Professor Hallett, he talks a little bit more about uh, how the atomic bombs did not save lives or end the war. And a lot of it was also like it wasn't ordered either. The next word that we found was weapon or weapons, and those are really linked with theme 4, so reader reflection or critical thinking. So an example of that was what are your thoughts about these weapons being used in modern day society? So that's an example of a question that would show up in a textbook. And then, of course, Truman, surrender, saved, or saved. We also did a little bit further as to how many perspectives we found. So we saw the US perspective by Truman and Pike, who was I believe that was the Secretary General at the time. And then we also saw the scientist perspective, US bomber co-pilot, and one Japan perspective, Hirohito, and one a Hibakusha, who is a survivor of the atomic bomb. So their perspective as well. And then Churchill, Winston Churchill, who was also one of the political leaders at the time. Okay, so here are just some quotes from the textbooks. And so, yeah, this one was more of a political theme. So here's in bolded, we have the themes that are there. So were these atomic weapons necessary? At the time, American leaders believed that the conquest of the Japanese homeland would take more than a year and cost the lives of hundreds of thousands of American soldiers. Although some believed that the Japanese were determined to fight to a bitter end, others thought they would surrender if they could retain their emperor. Winston Churchill wrote, "It would be a mistake to suppose that the fate of Japan was settled by the atomic bomb. Her defeat was certain before the first bomb fell." And so that was a quote from one of our textbooks, Earth and Its People, on page 768. And so we see, I believe that was theme 3. Yeah, so human health and casualties when they said cost the lives of hundreds of thousands of American soldiers. And then, of course, a quote here by Winston Churchill. And then I think these were political themes that we pulled out. Here's another quote that looked a little bit more about technological advances or modernity. And so, fear of nuclear war and radiation mutated monsters, clear reactions to the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki provided the first major theme. Yes, theme as in, I guess, a theme that they found in the culture of the United States at that time. So, not research theme. Serious nonfiction warning books like Rachel Carson's Silent Spring in 1962 and Paul Ehrlich, The Population Bomb, added environmental pollution and overpopulation to that list of fears for the future. And novels like Michael Crichton's Andromeda Strain and Robin Cook's Coma added medical fears like unstoppable pandemic and criminal organ replacement. Terrorism and visions of catastrophic climate change solidified fear of the future as a fundamental feature of both serious and popular culture. So this was another quote from Earth and Its People, and it's on page 891. And so again, that one really addressed theme 6, as well as, I want to say, theme 3, talking a little bit more about the effects of the atomic bomb on human health. Okay, and this last quote was a testimonial from a hibakusha. And so Yamaoka Michiko was 15 years old and living near the center of Hiroshima when the first bomb hit. They say temperatures of 7,000 degrees centigrade hit me. Nobody there looked like human beings. Humans had lost the ability to speak. People couldn't scream. It hurts, even when they were on fire. People with their legs wrenched off, without heads, or with faces burned and swollen out of shape. The scene I saw was a living hell. And so that was a quote from the American Reconstruction on page 584. And that's actually one of I think the only quote from a hibakusha out of all 3 textbooks. And so that's why it's really important that we have that hibakusha perspective so that we can understand that perspective a little bit more. And so back to our results. So our hypothesis was that textbooks will mainly share and emphasize factual historical information without delving into other social science aspects. So these are the 3 textbooks that we used or analyzed. And so here's a count of the themes by each textbook. And we saw that theme 5, of course, was the one that showed up the most, and as we expected. But there was a lot of other ones, but we noted down that the American Reconstruction to the 21st Century by Danzer et al. In 2009 actually had all themes covered. So theme 1 through theme 6, and did not leave out any of them. As for the other two, they left out, so American Nation left out theme 6, or did not have any um, ideas there about technological advances or modernity. And then the Earth and its people did not talk much about, or did not talk at all about the destruction of land through atomic weapons or the environmental impacts. Okay, so on to our discussion. So we believe that schools can further benefit from integrating various cultural values and perspectives, including peacebuilding in schools and extending that cultural dialogue with diverse populations. One of the things that we caught from the Nagasaki Youth Symposium was really the idea that um, education should really start early for peace building and perspective taking. So we had individuals from all over the world come in and say um, that they only learned about, the atomic bomb in high school. And so in Japan, they really learn it early on. They do visits to uh, the museums for Nagasaki and Hiroshima, so those museums, and learn a little bit more about that really early on. But we do understand that context is important, so where we live. But we believe that we also have to acknowledge that the diversity of histories that make up our student population as well. So there is lots of diversity, lots of cultural values, and lots of experiences that families have also had. So, what other events have impacted families who live here? And just understanding and taking that perspective around cultural relevance and being responsive to the students as well. Another thing that we also thought was important was we only learn about world history in high school. And most textbooks really just rush through the context, and maybe um, adjusting the time span of history covered in education might be a good idea to, uh, instead of focusing on really ancient times, um, more so like covering, the things that are really important or still relevant for today's world. And so that's some thoughts from our peers at the Nagasaki Youth Symposium. And yeah, so future research would probably be looking at additional textbooks to gain a more diverse perspective, and as well as looking at beyond the atomic bomb event on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So perhaps into other relevant contexts or historical events like slavery or Civil War, or other events like Pearl Harbor and so on and so forth, and just understanding um, the power of those events. They're not just history, but they're lived experiences, actual experiences that people have gone through. Another part of that research was discussing with stakeholders like parents, students, educators, government officials, their opinions and thoughts around the historical perspectives taught around World War II and the atomic bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so that's really what this presentation here tonight is going to be around, really discussing with you all. What are your thoughts and opinions around these historical perspectives taught? Okay, I know that I kind of rushed through our research a bit, but are there any questions before we go into the discussion section of our research? Or anything I need to clarify?
Well, thank you, Jessica, for going deep into your research. One question that kind of comes to mind is, did you ever think about, because one of the things that I've learned personally as it comes to a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of these tragic moments in history is that many times they happen because of those in power, those in government, those in the military. Um, Rarely is it a decision by the people. Rarely is
Mm-hmm.
it the citizens, the community that is, you know, interested in expanding the reach of the nation. And they always talk about, history is taught by those that win the wars or those that colonize. But to be even more specific, it's written by those in power, written by the government, and not so much by the people. And so I think you kind of alluded to like future research, but you kind of clump the people and government together. And I think it'd be
Mm-hmm.
important to kind of separate the two, because I think we're getting the perspective of the government, or the government at the time when that history book was decided to be written. And so, but even, looking at just the history books across the United States, it ranges from every state so much. But yeah, no, I think it'd be so wonderful to just get books that are, history written by the people, those that were there, the communities that were there. Unfortunately, many times those voices are not the ones that, and yes, there's a lot to cover in history classes, and, have to figure out how to compartmentalize,
Yeah.
you know, introducing so many topics in the short time span. I don't know, it's just more comments, I guess, than actual
Yeah.
questions. But I don't know if anyone in the audience has anything they'd like to contribute or any own perspectives they may have. No, okay,
I believe I have a question.
yes, please.
Yes. First of all, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, most
Okay,
definitely.
good. Where did the train of thought go? Yeah, Jess, I'm just really curious. So before, diving into this kind of research and before attending these kind of symposiums and events, um, how do you think your opinions? Maybe we'll actually go into this for discussion, so it might be kind of a spoiler right now. But yeah, I'm just curious. So how has your perspective on these matters changed from doing these kind of researches, participating in this kind of broadening of horizons, and more or less attending these kind of events?
Yeah. That is a great question. I think my perspective, so if I'm being completely honest, it is recording too, but if I'm being completely honest, I did not care much for world history, and so I lacked that motivation to really connect and emphasize with the topics being shared or the topics being taught. And I think this experience really helped me understand that this is relationship building. This is really experiences that individuals have gone through. And so connecting in that way and really understanding that it is an experience, it's something that has shaped their life, has really been eye-opening for me. So I'm really happy I got to do this research and take a bit of a look into textbooks. And because I'm so interested in education, I want to see like how we can support the people, how we can support more of that relationship building. And I think my slide just closed. Sorry. Um,
No, I
but
just opened it up since I figured it'd
oh,
be
got it.
better if the folks can actually see each other. That's all. Please
Yeah.
continue.
Um, yeah, I think that answered your question. Sorry, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, did that answer your question?
No, it did. That was a great answer, Jess. Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
No, thank you for that. I think one of the things that maybe you were alluding to or not is, one of the things we always talk about is conflict happens, or, relationship happens because we try to hopefully understand the perspectives that we're coming from. And in such a diaspora, the world that we live in, and so many different communities and cultures, that are interacting with each other, I think understanding a little bit about that history is so key as we, maybe on your everyday, you're not, interacting with people who are hibakushas, but you are interacting with folks who may have had hibakushas in their own family, or they've had that experience and it's kind of shaped the way that they kind of perceive life in a certain way. So yeah, you're correct. It is relationship building. Is there anything you wish others knew more about?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think just being open to learning new things, I think that's really important and really questioning that narrative. Like what is being taught? What are you really learning? What are you really seeing? And then I guess connecting with other people and like confirming, is that really true? Is that really what you experienced or what you felt or what else, what else can I learn from you or how can I support you during this time? I feel like that's a very like perspective way of thinking, but yeah, just understanding that individual and uh being curious is really something I guess I would suggest to others keep going for.
I know the experience itself for myself, my first go around, even this time around, since I got to share this experience with you all, was it's a very emotional experience. As we talk about leaning into one's discomfort to grow, is there any words of wisdom on self-care that you would um, recommend for folks? Because these are heavy issues, these are heavy topics to be delving into.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh. I know it's always easier said than done, but I think just being honest with yourself, what you're going through, and also sharing that with others. Sharing like what are your fears, what are your concerns, or what's something that's bothering you. Being open and sharing that with others is not only a way of like alleviating that concern, but also just being there for each other and enhancing that relationship building and acknowledging that we're all just humans trying to get through, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you
I
for those
believe you had
questions.
something planned as far as the discussion portion, so I'll let you take it away.
Good. Yeah. I'll go ahead and share my screen again so we can have the questions there. Yeah. So I guess going over the themes that we found, or just looking at these themes that we found, what best aligns with your goals for education, and are there any ideas or themes that you'd like to see more in textbooks regarding, it can be regarding like the atomic bomb or just in general, like what would you, yeah, I'm open to the floor to that. Like feel free to drop in the chat, like just theme 1 or theme 4. I know that a limitation to our research was actually, we are looking at just the textbooks and not the entire curricula itself, or not the lesson plan. But I think the textbook is also one thing that's a resource and that should be really refined too. So yeah, any themes that you'd like to see, or what best aligns with your goals for education? Is there anything that you wish that you learned about the atomic bomb?
I'll jump in briefly while people kind of fill up the chat section, but I know in my own experience throughout my earlier years of education, it was just very, I guess, cyclical, where it was not there wasn't much discussion. It was a lot of like, I'm here to basically regurgitate information, or you can read the book, and this before you can just Google things and you can just say like, oh, I could have just read up on this on my own, kind of thing. So I think theme 4 is so essential in the reflection piece and critical thinking, and hopefully that expands further into having open dialogue about the topics that are being presented, because many times I find that sometimes earlier education, I know there's different types out there, but it tends to be one way. The educator, the teacher is kind of providing information, and the audience or the students are just kind of supposed to process it, take it in, and be ready for a multiple choice exam or a paper down the road, possibly, or short answer exam kind of thing. So
Right.
something.
Yeah. I think discussions are definitely a good way of fostering that. I know that I remember in one of the textbooks they did actually have like a debate like activity that people could do, and so that was also really interesting as well. I think for me, I feel like more testimonials, or just that human aspect. I was really missing that part.
And I think part of it's just maybe it's a fear for what additional questions will be brought up by those testimonials, because just in my experience of hearing a couple of hibakusha testimonies in the past few years, I mean, yes, they're all centered around the same topic, but the experience itself is very unique and different in itself. And I think part of what I for me, the question with the testimonials is like the in between after that incident that happened, and to the point that they are in front of you virtually or in person sharing their story about that specific incident. You know, what's the story in between there, you know, between that event that happened and that led them to this point and later on in their life, because you don't get testimonials for people in their 20s or 30s or 40s, 50s, even 60s. Many times they're in their 80s, 90s when and part of it, I think it's just um, they're reflective upon life and kind of want to give back. But I've also kind of noticed it's more of a wanting to normalize, you know, yes, I've gone through this very tragic experience, but I would love to be able to just have a normal life as much as possible, whatever that normal life may be. And I think that's something that should be spoken about a little more, just because that's the true opportunity for connection for an audience that may have not experienced that specific, you know, event in life. Because I think everyone would like to, in some capacity, have a quote unquote normal life, whatever that may entail, you know, whether it's pursuing an education, having a family, having friends, being able to go out, being able to go see a movie, you know, go out to eat, whatever it may be. Just these nuances in society that, you know, so, but yeah, I think I think it's also what I've loved learning about is the care and the love for their loved ones and wanting to protect them from these stories. And so and I think it also opens up a larger conversation around what testimonials are available in each person's own family. You know, for all we know, you know, for those that have grandparents still with us, or even your parents, just, you know, what stories are they not sharing because they want to protect you from the harm or the hurt of those experiences. But it is, once more, as we're learning right now, it's through those testimonies that we're able to hopefully not repeat history and be able to grow from those experiences and build relationships. So it's like this, you know, the two perspectives of this coin. But anyways, themes, we have 4153 comes up.
Looking at the chat too. Thank you for everyone who put their thoughts in the chat. Seems like 3 is one that has most, 3 and 1. But yeah, definitely. As we go into more of the you know, climate change and how that's become more relevant to our today's society, that's definitely a theme that could be focused on, like, what are the lasting impacts of the atomic bomb on, you know, that community or the world in general, and so yeah, human health as well as casualties. Yeah. Mm. Thank you all for doing that and dropping your thoughts in the chat. I guess my second question, I'm not sure if anyone has gone through the Matsunaga exhibit, but um, I guess is there, if you did, what would you hope to see more of, and what else should our students in high school consider? If you haven't seen these resources, there's also a QR code that's in the bottom right, and so feel free to scan that, and then you can look at previously recorded presentations of all of these.
If you don't mind me just jumping in about that number one theme that you were addressing about the larger impacts, if anyone's interested in learning further about that, there's actually, I think, a couple events happening, but one specifically is your other researcher, Kristen, is doing a talk about the public health effects of nuclear impact and the government's response, which I think might be in line with some of the ideas that you all may have. So klau.eventbrite.com, I'll throw it in the chat. If you're interested in learning further, there'll be a future conversation around that area.
Yeah, that definitely fulfills the need for like theme 1 and theme 3. Yeah, that'd be great. I look forward to watching her presentation as well. Yeah, well, the QR code is there if you, oh, thank you, Crystal. 2 and 5. Oh, let me see that. Oh, there it goes. Yeah, thank you for sharing. No news and political historical mathematics. But yeah, as going back, yeah, feel free to explore other resources in this QR code down at the bottom. And yeah, I have this other activity, but I'm not sure if you'll want to do it. But anyways, if you all want to, it'll be here on our slides. And if you want to go back and watch this recording, I can just pause it and you can go through it yourself. But this is an action plan by Seeds of Peace. And so there's 4 steps to the action planning framework. So it's envisioning the harvest, preparing the soil, planting the seeds, and then nurturing, sorry, to sustain. And so some more of those questions or the sub questions, I guess, would be imagine the most peaceful home for community. What does that look like? And so for this presentation, an example could be like imagine your most peaceful school or world history classroom environment, and just like exploring that perspective a little bit more. What does that look like, and then what are some barriers to achieving your vision, and who do you need on your team, and then identifying tools, activities, approaches that may address those barriers that you identified, and then how will you sustain your success. So I will go through the slides briefly, but I think for sake of time, we don't have to go through the entire.
If you don't mind, I can just jump in briefly.
Sure.
And so just one thing to kind of keep in mind as we look at peace building action planning, one of the things we really try to get across, if you don't remember any of these steps, that's quite okay. At least take away the idea of shifting the dialogue or thinking about things proactively. So it is such human nature to be reactive to situations that arise. So the idea is how can we take a pause, take a step back and, analyze what is the culture that's nurturing this? And maybe we can do that by looking at some proactive steps. And so that's why the action planning does not start with what are the barriers, and how can we react to that? It's more like, let's envision the harvest, what is the idea for a peaceful community? Obviously, everyone I think would like some world peace, but I think narrowing it down to something more manageable within uh, the realms of your community, that maybe it's within the realms of your life or your personal or your professional or however, if there even is a line that you separate the two or not, and then looking at how do you what exactly is preventing that, and who do you need in your corner to be able to develop that. And I think the last step is really most essential because, as you all may or may have not encountered, there's some really great projects out there that are supporting communities, supporting various folks, but many times the moment that the person kind of heading it up tends to head out, well then that's it kind of stops. But it doesn't mean that the community doesn't still need those resources and doesn't need that support system. So that's really what Nurture Sustains like it's talking about. How can we make sure that that project, that harvest that you've nurtured, can continue on even after you've been there? So like, what's the contingency plan, what's the backup, and ideally, in when we talk about peace building, hopefully the resources or the infrastructure is there, so it can kind of continue on even without you being there. So it's just a matter of shifting the mindset a little. But But yeah, I'll let you take it away. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. Thank you for explaining that a little bit further than I could. Um, yeah, so I'll just go through it really briefly. We won't, yeah, I don't think we can really delve too deeply into um, each of these activities, but here's an example of what that would look like. So here's another prompt, or the same prompt, but a little bit expanded. So imagine your peaceful, beloved community. What does it look like? Consider what it looks like within yourself, within your home, in your community, and beyond. And here's some ideas there. And so feel free to utilize this as you think a little bit further about like what you'd want to see in education, or what would you want to see, um, I guess, in the relationships that you have with others, talking about, difficult ideas or difficult things, and just, fostering that relationship a little bit more. And then the second step, of course, is preparing the soil. So what are the opportunities and barriers to achieving your vision? And then to achieve that vision, who do you need on your team? And so some examples more over here. And then step 3 is planting the seeds. So identifying specific tools, activities, and approaches that may address those barriers that you identified. So there's actually a seeds co-op kit that Seeds of Peace have created. There's also other resources, other curricula, other articles, best practices that you know of, relationships that you can, use, and other ideas that you come up with, etc. And so more ideas here as to, what could address those barriers. Jose, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about the co-op toolkit,
Talk about what you said.
the seeds co-op toolkit.
Oh yeah, I was gonna put it in the chat. There's a
Oh, thank you.
seeds.org for anyone who wants to learn further about it. You can go there under their top tab that talks about the COP, the co-op toolkit. The idea is that just to clarify, the toolkit is not, it's vast, has a lot of great skill sets, but it's not all encompassing. So it is always, it's a work in progress, constantly evolving. And I think that's the beauty of it. The idea that there's all these different strategies for icebreakers and group projects to try to get folks to kind of collaborate and start working together. But in different ones you want to utilize depending upon the age group or the communities you may be involved in, as well as, the genders and so forth. Uh, but keep in mind, if it's not there, doesn't mean that it can't happen. You can always develop something new. Uh, Additionally, I just wanted to, as you go through Seeds of Peace, if you ever wanted to go through one of their in-person workshops, they do have those normally between September to January. They're normally on Oahu, and you can kind of just keep checking the website or sign up for their newsletter, and you'll be updated when registration for those open up. Also, for any high school students out there, there's a series during the summer. They have two, one in the month of June and one in the month of July. They call it a girls talk back, which is specifically for high school women or girls, or that they will, one's in person, one's virtual. I forget which month is what, but you can learn more about it through the website, and you can actually apply. You get in, you get to utilize basically this toolkit to work on developing an action plan as it relates to something happening within your own community. So yeah, just throwing out some resources.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those resources. Okay, and then our last one, as Jose had mentioned, really important, nurturing to sustain. So how will you sustain your success? So what's going to keep it going? Or are there others that are, supporting the project or supporting the plan as well? Fundraising as well could be a good idea. And here's just some ideas on the left, as we've seen before in the other slides. Yes, and then lastly, the step 5 action plan, statement, and timeline. So this really condenses all that you have brainstormed in those 4 slides, or yeah, four steps. So prototyping a solution to address a specific problem, teammates, what will you design or what will you commit to, and then how will you evaluate your success, or how will you nurture that and sustain it. And then just a commitment timeline. So what will you plan to do in 24 hours, a week, a month, 2 years, 2 months, and then a year. And so it's a really great resource for, I guess, also educators when they're thinking about, what can we do to foster peace building in education, especially around, the atomic bombings. And so what can students do to you know, support that cross-cultural understanding? Oh yeah, and then this is also, yeah, the action plan summary. Sorry, all the people are like up on that side and stuff, moving everyone. But yeah, so that's a summary again of your action plan. And so envision the harvest, prepare the soil, plant seeds, and then nurturing to sustain. Any questions right now or anything else? I think that is our last slide for today. Yeah. If not, this
I
is
had a
my
question.
acknowledgement. Oh, go for it.
Um, I was wondering if there's any movies that kind of portray the atomic bombing and basically the war, kind of like from Japan's side. Because I remember in middle school, the way that we learned, at least at my school, that we learned about the atomic bombing and what was going on in Japan was through a book called Unbroken, which is, had a movie and, portrayed one side of the story and one person, who obviously was abused and was a prisoner of war. But, having stuff like that taught in the schools does create a bias that you guys have obviously seen. So I'm wondering, like, if you guys have any movies that you think would like counter that and just give like a neutral perspective in schools.
Yeah, I really like that question. I believe I'm blanking on his name, but he did a documentary that we watched in Hiroshima. But it brought together Pearl Harbor survivors and hibakushas, and got their stories together, and it's a really beautiful documentary. And so I believe it's called Sakura and Pearls. I can't remember what his name is. You know his name, Jose?
The director's it's G.K.
Yeah.
Hunter. It is the current Pearls Healing from World War II. I just put a direct link to the documentary. It's a little under an hour in the chat. Also, I'll just kind of link you all up to the Matsunaga Institute YouTube channel. There's a collection of recordings, just other talks that we've had with other speakers. There were actually two for this series that's related to the exhibit. There were two documentaries that we spotlighted. One was the Current Pearls. So the recording we have on there doesn't actually have the recording of the film, but it does have a dialogue with the director moderating a panel with three folks who were in the documentary as well. But there is also the opportunity, if you're looking at some additional footage, Joyla Kaniuta joined us last Friday to this is like a 1/3 of a new documentary she's working on, but it's what did she call it? It's Hibakusha Legacy for Peace. So she went through the archives over in Hiroshima and also in certain parts of the US to put together a short 50-minute documentary there. But yeah, I highly encourage you to kind of delve into and honestly, even if you just wanted to hear some testimonials from Nagasaki or Hiroshima Hibakusha, we have some of those recordings on there as well. So hear it firsthand from communities.
Yeah, you read my mind. I was just about to say, we have hibakusha testimonies or recordings too. So definitely great resources to understand that perspective. And thank you for that question. Any other questions for me? Yeah, thank you all for joining us. Yeah, I want to acknowledge you all first. I really appreciate your time here tonight. I really do. Thank you for the questions, the participation in the chat as well. So thank you again. I want to thank our mentors, Dr. Maestro Ng, and of course, Jose. Thank you for moderating and being our mentor for this research project as well. There are so many others who have supported us and who have inspired us, and yeah, we just really appreciate everyone who has supported this project. And so thank you again all for being here tonight. QR code, I think that's to the same website. I'm not too sure as the other slide that I linked earlier. So feel free to check out those for more resources if you want to learn a little bit more or attend other events or other presentations from other speakers. We'll have a couple more in May.
Thanks so much. Thank you I'm going to stop your sharing if that's okay. All right. Well, just want to thank you so much, Jessica, for allowing us to learn further about your research and your journey into this field. I appreciate you opening up about your experiences, lessons learned, and during today's dialogue. Thank you for your kindness and leadership as we learn about, unfortunately, the tragic impact of nuclear bombs. Last but not least, thanks again to everyone who joined us today.